So, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. This is a bonus session that I've opened up to everyone, but invited you to ask for the link so we don't get any unwelcome intruders, I hope. And today is really, again, having fun with astrology, having fun with astrology in action, and looking at a chart, and then in many ways hoping that the mystery guest will speak the chart. And as I mentioned in the email to you all, our mystery guest has many years a connection some time ago with somebody you'll all know very well, and some very interesting stories about them, and has written a book about them as well. So I'm going to tell you the identity a little bit later before they come on, and hopefully we'll hear them speak their chart well. And I encourage you to ask questions in the chat box, and to make any comments about the chart as we go through today in the first 45-50 minutes, perhaps, maybe an hour, and to learn from the experience. And obviously we're all going to be super kind, because it must be a little bit daunting being with a bunch of astrologers having a look at what can feel like one of the most personal moments of reflection when you're having your chart done. So yes, I always commend people on their bravery for opening themselves up to astrologers. So this is a chart for tonight, 7 o'clock, from my location. And as I mentioned before we started, we just had a new moon in Aries in the 6th house from where I am and from where the guest is. And that's always interesting, because it suggests new seeds being planted, not just in Aries, but also the fact that it's a new moon, which has an Aries quality to it. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yes, it does look like Joseph Campbell's chart in some ways. Thank you. Yes. And it has a new moon feel to it, but also maybe our conversation today with the mystery guest will help them plant new ideas into their lives in terms of their work, their schedule, their ideas, etc. And if we were to look at this chart as a one-on-one, we are really, well, you could argue whether we're the ascendant or the descendant, but this is our class, really. We are the community waiting for the other to arrive. So we are Libra rising, so we're represented by Venus in Taurus. And our mystery guest, I would argue, is, speaking of arguing, Mars in Gemini, I would argue is the Aries descendant, and of course symbolized by Mars in Gemini. And I know the mystery guest is working on a new book, working on republishing the original book. And so that feels very Mars in Gemini in the 9th house as well. But we'll find out more, and we're going to have a look at the charts in just a moment. Okay. All right. New share. All right. So hopefully you can all see that. I'm getting emails in of people very last minute asking for the link. Don't you just love that? Okay, so mystery guest. Now, the reason that the LSA has always done these, every year we try to get at least one mystery guest in. Sometimes one year, a few years ago, they didn't show up. They fell asleep on the couch, and we ended up having a mystery guest session without the mystery guest. That was a memorable one, but hopefully it'll be run smoothly tonight. But the reason that we have a mystery guest is, as I say, for you all to watch astrology come alive, watch somebody speak their chart. And I'm interested always in people and interesting people. And this mystery guest has a very interesting life in very illustrious surroundings at times, with very famous people, and Yeah, okay. So let's take a look at the chart. All right. So what I'm going to encourage you to do in the chat box is to make some comments about each section that we're going to look at. And hopefully I'll remember some of them and we'll mention it to the mystery guests when they come in, and to see if they agree, or simply they've got a different take on that, or it may even just raise a question that would be an interesting avenue to explore. Okay. All right. Um, and so what do we got? We've got the sun in Scorpio. And I tend, over the years, the mystery guests have been more scorpionic than I would ever have imagined, that somebody would put themselves in that place of expose, really. Because Scorpio is incredibly private sign, usually. But maybe it's my Mercury Pluto that just brings out people that are happy to talk about these areas. So we've got the sun in Scorpio, we've got the moon in Libra, and we've got the ascendant in Sagittarius. So let's start with the ascendant in Sagittarius. Okay. Good questions. Yes. Okay. Already coming up. Yes. Taboos. Yes. Okay. Let's think about the ascendant in Sagittarius. What's your feeling about the energy there? Think about the fiery ascendant, how somebody may come across. Now, in a artificial situation like this, the mystery guest may not come across exuberantly in the way you might expect, or maybe they will. We'll have to see. But we do know that with Sagittarius on the ascendant, there is huge energy to live life fully, to try to get the best out of life, try to struggle with that half glass full, half glass empty situation. Sagittarius is a sign that wants generally to be positive, to see the best side of life, to keep things on and up. Yeah. Okay, let's have a look. You've got your questions coming in. Explorer, passionate, spiritual. Yes, interesting. I want to talk to them about the spirituality that we can see in different parts of the chart. Okay, Heather says, ascendant conjunct Saturn and Antares, warrior, individualistic, explorative, very positive, charismatic. Levine says, someone who approaches life seeking exploration and adventure. Yes, as Sagittarius walks out their front door, life is a great adventure. Let's grab it by the proverbial and enjoy it. Try to get the most out of life. Those of you who know my writings or have been in class with me also know that I think I've noticed over the years that Sagittarius has that downside where they're cheery for everybody, everything is great, they're all smiles. And one of the great things about Sagittarius on the ascendant is the smile, welcoming. They're very front of house, an ability to just cut the crap and talk to anybody and be welcoming. There can be that. But one of the challenges is trying to keep it positive, keep it up. And often Sagittarius battles a feeling of, why isn't the world as passionate as I am? Why isn't everybody an evangelist? Why do I have to work so hard at getting everyone to give more than 42.5% when I'm giving 100% myself? So I've noticed over the years that Sagittarius moon, Sagittarius ascendant, often battles a sense of despondency, a feeling of, oh God, I thought it was going to be so much better than that. I thought it was going to be fabulous. Yeah. And that can be a challenge. And it may be something that if I get allowed into the Scorpio realm, maybe our guest may say something about that as well. All right, larger than life. Yes, yes. Maybe a little bit less so in this environment, but give them an inch and they'll run probably a good mile with that. We'll see. We'll see. A few years ago, we had a Gemini who is used to be a stand-up comedian. He's now an amazing jazz singer, jazz vocalist. He came in as a mystery guest. And when I've been with him at a party, a restaurant, he's so witty, so funny. And when he arrived and was in this situation, his Cancer ascendant came out instead of the Gemini. And I was hoping he might gossip about people, etc. But that didn't happen. So you never know which part of the chart you're going to meet, particularly under this, as I say, this artificial setup. Okay, so Sagittarius, what else are we saying? Philosophical, life of the party. Yes, always interesting, isn't it? The Scorpio and the Sagittarius together. Remember that signs next door to each other are incredibly different. Scorpio prefers to sort of be in the dark and be able to view things, perhaps from a two-way mirror. That might be the feeling of Scorpio in life. Oh, let me just realize that we have reached 100, so I need to bear with me a second. Okay, I had a feeling we might go over 100. Okay, I'm just going to open up a Zoom room for that. Otherwise, people will be wondering. Okay, so in a moment, we should have a few more people waiting to come in. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. So, okay, let's come back. So let me have a look what else you're saying. So that combination is always interesting. The Scorpio, reserved, quiet. The Sagittarius, more exuberant. I'll tell you anything. Or I want to share with you. I want to get you excited. And Scorpio is the poker player, of course. So those two are always interesting. And with Scorpio, you never know whether they're going to reveal themselves or they'll put on a mask. And with the Sagittarius, that could be a mask of somebody that's fun, playful, joking, etc. Okay. So what else have you got here? And of course, we have not only Sagittarius on the ascendant, we also have Saturn there as well. Okay. So we have a vein of responsibility. It could be the message early on, and remember the ascendant is not just how we go out into the world, it's also those early messages of how to behave along with the moon. So the moon in Libra might say, behave, have good manners. Saturn rising in Sagittarius might say, you're doing too much. Don't be too much. Settle down. Be a little bit more reserved. Curb your enthusiasm. Great phrase for Saturn rising in Sagittarius. Or you have a responsibility to keep us happy, to look after us, to keep everything positive. One of the great examples I use in my books sometimes, or my lectures on my books, is the chart of Shirley Temple. And this chart is similar in that way. Shirley Temple had Sagittarius rising and Saturn in Sagittarius in the first. And that whole idea of keeping everybody cheery, and even the president at the time said, we're going through a big depression. This is the 1930s, but as long as we have Shirley Temple, we'll be okay. So there may be responsibility to be everybody's, champion in some ways, or it might temper the evangelical aspect of this person and the chart. Okay. All right, so what else? Buoyant, exhilarating, action-orientated, strong opinions and beliefs, yes. Existentialist, yes. So Sophia said Saturn may contain that expansive and generous energy. It might do. It may just put it into hard work or serious things, or I'm going to channel this commitment, this responsibility into belief systems. It could be a belief system that needs regular work, yeah, or one that is that needs some sort of routine as well, maybe. Okay, big broad statue, perhaps, or appearance, big presence. Yes, whether Sagittarius is a tall person or not, that probably depends on the family, of course, although they could be taller than the family. But I remember years ago, a psychic friend of mine, um, she got this view of somebody hugely tall, and in fact they were a midget, and it was very funny on television when that happened. And so Sagittarius isn't always tall, but it's certainly got presence, a feeling of exuberance, larger than life quality. Lisa says disappointed idealist, perhaps. Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. I don't always understand Sag, says Mary. Okay. Yeah, it's got to believe in something. I think Sagittarius is a sign that really needs to know that things are possible in the future. That keeps them going, and they'll work hard. And they've also got an ability to, they're like a cat with 9 lives. They can land on their feet, be with the right people. As long as they've got that feeling of it's going to be okay, it'll be all right, that the demons don't win the battle. And we know that Scorpio is a sign with a lot of demons. It's a dark sign. Sagittarius, we've all got our demons, but Sagittarius may be good at just throwing them off. But Scorpio isn't afraid to look at the darker side of its nature. Okay. All right. So yes, teach, feeling they're right about things. Yes, there's always a certainty about Sagittarius. Great. Okay. Okay. Lots of, oh my goodness, lots of comments. Thank you very much for those. All right. If I've missed anything super important, let me know. Okay. Then we've got the moon in Libra. Okay. Now, what do we know about the moon in Libra? We know that on one level, the moon in Libra spends quite a lot of time trying to keep the peace, trying to ensure that the domestic situation is balanced, that it's fair. It may be somebody who later gets very interested in issues of fairness, issues of equality, issues of respect for everybody, equal respect for everybody, for instance. Yeah. So there's that. Also manners, etiquette, making sure you're okay, then I'll be okay. That feeling. You know? Secretly, as you know, I often say with Libra, it's I want you to be okay. And if you agree with me, we'll both be okay. You know, it can be, it's a cardinal sign. It wants what it wants. But often Moon and Libra find themselves in work situations, house situations where there is conflict, and they end up having to play diplomat, peacemaker, referee in between 2 warring factions. So I don't know, we'll find out whether the mystery guest has that or wants to talk about that. Whether they have it and want to talk about it, they're 2 different things, of course. So that moon in Libra is designed to try to keep the harmony. And we know that if you avoid conflict, it will come to you. It's a bit like Saturn. If you avoid responsibility, other people will discipline you. That's just a sort of law of the universe, isn't it? So with the moon in Libra, maybe this person has learned to deal with conflict, to manage it, to navigate it well, with some diplomacy, with some humor, and an ability to look after people, or at least to help other people feel looked after as well. What else do you say about this? Emotionally likes peace. Thank you, Helen. Harmony and people may need beauty to keep the emotions happy. Discerning, a little self-critical. We could see that with the Venus and the Jupiter in Virgo as well. Image maker, mentor, manager of big expansive projects, says Sue. Thank you for that. Yeah, Sally says Joe Biden, the current president of the United States, is a Scorpio sun with Sag rising. Apparently, we haven't got the exact time, unfortunately, but he maintains a very positive demeanor while having suffered unimaginable tragedies. Yes, yes. Keeping up the fact that tomorrow's going to be better. And if today's really crappy, we've got something to look forward to at least. I guess that song from Annie must, you know, this symbol of Annie must be Sagittarian, singing tomorrow. the sun will come out. Okay, I don't want to put that in your head. There's a lot far better tunes to play tonight that will be in your head by the time we finish tonight. A beautiful home, living environment. Libra moon has, it's a sweeping statement, but a Libra moon has taste or wants to have taste and wants money to have taste. Yeah. So you could imagine, particularly with the Libra midheaven as well, and Venus nearby, image is going to be important. Good clothes. Libra, Capricorn, these are signs, and Leo, of course. Give me a designer label. Then even if it doesn't show and nobody knows, I know. I know it's a one, you know, it's a designer label. Okay, so yes, image might be very important. Or the midheaven in Libra, this person might be known for being one half of somebody else or connected to somebody else. That's what often is the case with the midheaven in Libra. Gracious host, hostess, diplomatic relations. Thanks, Brenda. Caring about what other people think in the group. Yes, Candice, moon in Libra in the 11th. Yes, could be passive aggressive. Yeah, but Libra, what do I say about Libra? Libra sends you to hell in such a way that you actually look forward to the trip. Yeah, they've got a way about them. Business agreements, fair contracts. Yeah, and Vivian says as well, with the moon in Libra, midheaven, Venus nearby, particularly in Virgo, it could be about trying to perfect the look of someone or themselves. Yeah. So in the cosmetics or the beauty field. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? With Venus up there. But in Virgo, it's the detail, isn't it? It's not, if it were in Leo, it might be the, you know, the big, glamorous, over the top, gold, glitzy. With Virgo, it may be, the beauty may be in the detail. Okay, we'll take a look at that a little bit more as well. Artistic mother or mother that needed to balance life or struggled to balance that. Remember that the moon describes what the mother left us with, what she was trying to deal with as we're being born. And it may be the breakdown or the inequality in a relationship, because I always think that if you've got the moon in Libra, it's not that you come into the world where everything is harmonious. You come into the world where there is war, there is dispute, there is divorce or breakdown of relationship, and you're there in some way to help patch things up, bring people together, pull opposing sides together and try to find some sort of common path as well. Okay, so let's see. All right, okay. I'm laughing. Diana keeps sending me direct messages with comments about who it might be. Okay, all right. Could this be an astrologer? Well, I don't think they know much about astrology. But they, you know, with the new moon in Aries today in the 6th house, we might send them to a completely new career direction. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Okay. All right. So Gloria starts mentioning about the practical, hardworking person. So we can see the Venus, Jupiter in Virgo and Saturn rising. So that corner is Saturn Virgo of the chart. Yeah, Saturn Virgo. And that disciplined, hardworking, particular, devoted to service, responsible, shows up, I hope. And that's one corner of it. The other corner is the Jupiterian, Venusian quality, the Sagittarian quality of all that, which is let's have a party, let's be glamorous, let's have some fun. Yeah. I'm sort of too much, says Venus, Jupiter. But in Virgo, it can be put into the work, can be put into the craft. So it might be about beauty, it might be about larger than life, but it's craftsmanship as well. That's where the talent is, with Jupiter in Virgo and Venus there as well. And you might think of Venus at the final degree of Virgo, it's sort of last minute as well. Somebody might say, I need this in by 5 o'clock, and they're busy creating or crafting something at the last minute. So there may be that as part of the story too. Okay, Elizabeth says, what about the father? Well, I'm going to ask about the father. We may not get many answers, but there is a Sun-Neptune wide conjunction along with Mercury. So as you say, it could be an absent father or difficult relationship, maybe. It depends what we see. We know that the Sun is also square Uranus. So that might be the first port of defiance in this person's life, is to go against authority. And often the father is the authority. Not always, of course. But often when there's a Neptune Sun, there can be a search for identity, a search for father, a search for father figures or people that represent that as well. Okay. Yes, Venus in Virgo, a goddess quality. Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. Good life, generous, says Sophie. Sophia says, Libra moon has an ability to attach emotionally, to analyze, to see both sides of the argument. Thank you, yes. Is the moon making any major aspects? It isn't. It isn't, is it? It's, no, that's interesting as well. So it's pretty much an unaspected moon. Yeah. Okay, and Vivian says possibly the mother or the self is into something humanitarian or non-profit. Maybe we'll find out more about that. Perhaps strongly relates, says Phil, to the collective emotional wounding. That might be the Mercury, Neptune in Scorpio that you're thinking of, perhaps, unless I'm, and the square to Chiron. Yeah, so we've got a T-square. A lot of people have Chiron opposite Uranus because they were moving at the same rate for many years in the 50s and 60s and beyond. In Aquarius Leo, it really talks about the pain of feeling different and needing to establish a feeling of specialness, taking your differentness and turning it into a feeling, well, I see the world differently, therefore that's a special thing, rather than I'm always on the edge, I'm always on the periphery. All right, yes, artist father, maybe unavailable father, yes, possible. Okay, all right, so how are we doing? Okay. All right, so we're 30 minutes in. I'm going to show you a few other charts. Vivian says possibly an actor, moon in Libra, very good at affecting or even reflecting other people's emotions, getting them across. And yes, 12th house planets are often linked to acting, aren't they? Becoming somebody else, merging, giving up the ego for a greater cause, or you know, both Virgo and Scorpio can be sacrificial in their own way. You know, Scorpio will sacrifice itself if it's intensely devoted to something. We've got Mercury, Neptune, very, very devoted. You know, that strong sense of my mind is addicted to this or devoted to this. It could be a poet, a lyricist. You know, image is going to be important with Mercury, Neptune conjunct. Square Uranus, unusual image, coming across differently from other people. Music, imagination, glamour, Mercury, Neptune. Whenever you speak to a client, and again, this is an artificial setup, of course. Whenever I speak to a client, I think of the moon, I think of Mercury, and I think, how are they going to receive it with the moon? So we have to tread very carefully. And with Mercury, how are they going to translate it into something that makes sense for them? And you know, if you have a client who's a Mercury Saturn person, you will meet facts, information, practicality. You'll get probably the bottom line answer. You'll get a pretty responsible attitude often. with Mercury Neptune, we might not be getting facts and data today. We might be getting memories, feelings, rather than this happened on this date. It was around this time. Yeah, Mercury Neptune isn't interested in the exact detail of something. It's more, this is how I was feeling. This is what happened. This is that's what we're probably going to get tonight. We're going to get a feeling of how this person analyzes the world, and it's from a gut, real deep Scorpio level. Yeah, it also could be psychological in its own way. I always think, Scorpio is always interested in mystery, and the greatest mystery is itself as well. So that can be an interesting challenge. Okay. Yes, photography, mediumship. I'm going to be asking them about the spiritual side, whether that comes into their world, certainly. Okay. So I'm going to take a look. All right, we're going to move on. All right. Are we all okay? Now, this is the person that he's very, very connected with. Very fiery. If you recognize this chart, don't put it in the chat box just for now, please. But very fiery, very interesting, very Saggy, very Leo, interesting person. Don't reveal it if you know it, this chart. And this is the two charts together. And when you've got a very strong connection, those of you who know astrology and have been doing it for years will know all about synastry, interconnections, interaspects. Your moon is on my sun and vice versa. These are the things that attract us like magnets to certain people. Yeah. Okay. And you're going to get similar degrees, similar emphases, and that's going to describe the relationship of why you're together. So here we have the Sagittarius stuff here linking very strongly to the other person's Sun, Mercury, and opposite is the moon. So the other person that he's associated with, who's very well known, has a Sun Moon opposition that falls on this person's ascendant, descendant. Okay. All right. We also have Neptune next to the Venus, Jupiter. So maybe this person was very attracted to the glamour or the unavailability or something goddess-like about the other person as well. Okay. Both Mars in Pisces. Interesting. That placement, which we haven't looked at yet, can be about putting one's energy into saving other people, but often saving themselves. That's the first thing. You can't dare to save anybody else until you've saved yourself. So this is, they both have that link. It's not within a few degrees. With synastry, I tend to look at up to 5 degrees here. But often you find that the nodes are connected. And our mystery guest has the Mercury Neptune connected to the famous person's nodes here. They're drawing in this Mercury Neptune. It could be spirituality, it could be drink and drugs, it could be glamour, it could be any of those things. Okay. Okay, I'm going to move it down a little bit more. And this is their composite chart. Those of you who don't know much about synastry yet, we take the chart and we take the midpoint, the middle point of each of them. So if you've got moon in Cancer and the other has moon in Virgo, then there's usually a moon in Leo at the center of the composite chart. Okay. And here we have Neptune rising, suggesting that if you believe in past lives, you could say that there's been a lot of water under the bridge with these two. There's been a long existing relationship through the lifetimes. Now, if you don't believe in any of that, you could say that this has a strong magnetic, almost addictive pull between the two of them. Yeah, Neptune rising in Libra. It's like, can't live with you, can't live without you. We're so strongly connected. We're soulmates, twin flames, brother and sister, that sort of feeling. Claire says codependency. That, yes, that's a word for it, possibly as well. A sense of addiction, a sense of, I need you, I need you. And we can see the Scorpio quality here strong. The famous person, very Sagittarian. Our mystery guest is very Scorpio. And the midpoints, the middle point of this comes into Scorpio. And we see this strong connection with a moon Pluto opposite Saturn in a T-square with this. So this is fixed. It's a fixed T-square. It's a long-lasting association. They had a working and best friends association for 10, 20 years. In many ways. Okay, and the moon Pluto as well adds to the tremendous intensity of the chart. Yeah, as well. Okay, so do we have any questions about any of these charts? Yes, Phil says they could both be healing for each other with that Chiron in the 7th. It could be that they share a similar wound. And that could be about not being put first. Chiron is in Aries in the 7th, or relationships where they don't feel put first. And maybe they have the opportunity to put each other first as best friends, or one puts the other one first and maybe doesn't feel first. So it could be, there could be the wound, it could be the path towards healing, if we look at that. Jupiter, Uranus are conjunct in the 9th. There may have been a lot of travel, a lot of writing, a lot of talking, all of that. Probably quite an exciting time together, which I know they had. And what else have we got here? Let's have a look at your comments. Yeah, Moon Pluto, intense bonds. Thank you, Agazit. Challenging energies that fuel the relationship, says Brenda. Mirroring each other's pain. With that Chiron, perhaps, yes. What else? Okay, so one is born at a balsamic moon, the end of the moon cycle, and the other is born during a full moon. Yeah, okay. Let's go back to the other person. And this is maybe why so many of you are here as well, to find out a little bit about who this person may be. And I promise I will tell you in a few minutes. And then we'll invite the mystery guest in to talk. Let's take a look at this chart. We've got strong Sagittarian energy, strong mutability with that mutable T-square of Sun, Mercury, opposite the moon in Gemini, T-square to that Mars in the 7th. Okay, so there's a real push-pull here. The Sagittarian energy, again, is hopeful, optimistic, possibly with strong faith. The moon in Gemini wants to go out into the world and display many skills. We've got the very energetic Leo ascendant, proud, perhaps known for a particular regal bearing or behavior. But we have this important T-square that sits here, Mars in Pisces in the 7th, maybe helping other people heal in relationships or having been wounded in relationships with this T-square, with the family, mother and father, and also possibly through relationship too. Okay, let's have a look at any other comments here. Okay, so Orla says the moon phase. Yes, the mystery guest has a balsamic moon, where the moon is just finishing off the cycle, and the person they're associated with has born at the full moon, just a few hours when the sun and moon are opposite each other. Okay. All right, so let's see. Oh, if there's any very vocal in the home. Okay, yes. Well, yes, yeah, there can be that as well. What's interesting is that the solid nature of the 4 angles, Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, Scorpio, suggesting staying power. The rest of the chart is very mutable. Lots of energy, lots of movement, versatility, wanting to do many different things, restless, ants in pants, that type of feeling. But the fixed angles are interesting as well. Yeah. Okay, wound in Cancer. So we're looking at that. Yes, maybe a wound in the family with that Chiron in Cancer. Have to be careful when we say wounds, particularly if we're talking to clients. Of course, we don't want them walking away feeling they have a big wound and holding on to that. And I think the Chiron placement tells us where the difficulties may be, but also the path to healing. So the path to healing with Chiron in Cancer would be to do that through the family, to your own family. It's a bit like feeling the family weren't as responsive or as caring, bringing you up, but when you get to do it, you get an opportunity to do that as well. Okay. So Mary says spirituality, exploration, really prevalent. Midheaven in, yes, with the Sagittarius, the 9th house. Vivian says midheaven in Taurus, musician, something to do with vocal things. Yeah, Taurus is often associated with music, isn't it? I think it's as common as any other sign, to be quite honest, in musicians. It's just like when the first ever book I wrote was called British Entertainers. And that was 1997, for heaven's sakes, a long time ago. And I had somebody write to me and said, this can't be right. There aren't enough Leos in this book. And that really made me laugh because I thought, oh, okay, I should have to dig up a few more Leos just to make it suit your purpose. But yes, it's one of those, the throat, of course, with Taurus, music, etc. But of course, singers and non-singers will have every possible combination. All right. Okay, so there's something about the two of them together. Let's have a look with this combination here of great belief, coming through difficulties, thinking of the future, enthusiasm, a lot. Together, they're probably unstoppable. Full on energy. Yeah. Mary says, we need more Leos. There we go, Mary. Leo likes to dress up and the other likes to beautify. Yes, so this could be, that's interesting, Heather. Was one of, was our mystery guest, the beauty advisor, the makeup artist, or the fashion guru to the famous person? Well, that's a very interesting way of looking at that with the Leo holding court, holding attention, Leo ascendant, and the Virgo planets here coming to be of service in some way. All right. The quest, myth making. Yes, Natasha, this Sagittarius thing is, yeah, we'll get through. Think positively. It might be that they shared religion, spirituality together, a belief system. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to ask. But certainly there's devotion linked here with the Venus Jupiter, much devotion to this as well. Okay. All right. Any questions? Any comments that we haven't looked at, or I've missed in your links? Let me know if there's anything. Yes. Thank you, Sarah. The Sun-Saturn aspect between the two of them is interesting, isn't it? Yes. When you have a interaspect of Sun-Saturn, there's often teaching, there's often discipline, there's often a parental role. It doesn't always mean that the Saturn person is the one doing the discipline. Certainly, the Sun could spotlight the insecurities of the Saturn person, or the Saturn could help give the solar person the framework, the structure, the base, and be responsible for them. With synastry, you never know quite who might be doing what to who. You do know what the feeling is between them, but never know quite who takes on that role. Often depends on all sorts of other non-astrological factors as well. Okay. All right. So both have Sun in the 12th. Well, only in this chart here, Levane, in terms of the inter aspects. So let's come back. I know our mystery guest is here already. So let's just come back to the final summary of the chart before we invite them in. I'm going to say who they are as well to just introduce them before we invite them in, just to get that out of the way, and then we can just hear them speak their chart. Okay. So, yeah, Sally mentions about the Sun-Saturn link between the two charts, the father they never had, or the authority, or yes, it's an interesting two-way situation there. So we come back to our mystery guest. Let's take a look. So we've mentioned, I feel a bit like Through the Keyhole, that show we had in the 80s and 90s, where they went into went into their home and said, who lives in a house like this? And they would summarize this. So we've got the intensity of the Scorpio, we've got the poet, we've got the idea of more feeling, expressing the feelings rather than the facts, the information, the data. It's more about image, poetry, fiction rather than fact, and being wrapped up in storytelling in some way. That could be a songwriter, it could be a storyteller in some way. Okay. And we have the Saturn rising in Sagittarius, that sense of enthusiasm for life, the excitement. We mentioned the downside of that, of it being the weight of the world on their shoulders, or finding it tough sometimes to be everybody's cheery, smiley person, but generally that energy of that enthusiasm of Sagittarius on the ascendant. We also mentioned the responsibility this person may feel to be more grown up from an early age, to be responsible for everybody else with Saturn rising, early family burdens, a sense of I've got to grow up quickly, or I've got to keep everybody positive, everybody enthused. Okay. We've also got the loyalty of Scorpio, the full-on intensity. I don't want to live life just on the outskirts or on the sidelines. I need to be involved fully. I need to be authentic. It needs to go deep. I don't want a superficial life. It's got to be highs and lows rather than just some happy 30 miles an hour, just obeying the highway code all the way through life. It's got to be about extremes with Scorpio. We also looked at the moon in Libra as perhaps playing peacemaker in the home, good manners, trying to look after everybody else, trying to take care of them. And that's written strongly again in the Venus-Jupiter up here in the chart. Okay. Levane says, I think they need space to explore with the Sagittarius on the ascendant. Travel, where are we going next? Often Sagittarius ends up in a country different from their birth, or in a place very different, learning about new cultures, or feeling like they're the foreigner or the constant foreigner. The third quadrant, yes, Phil, you asked about that in the chat box. Not a big fan of looking at quadrants too much, but I'd say that maybe the focus in life has been about the work, getting out there in life, in some way being of service in a major way as well, perhaps. But the Venus-Jupiter, what did we say about that? Devotion, service, being a little bit too much, but also being focused on craft, taking care of other people, the pleasure in the service to detail. We mentioned the glamour up here with the Libra, the Venus influence, also perhaps the service, using glamour as a craft or service as well. Okay, Thank you, Phil. Yes, the fourth quadrant. Yes, of course, not the third. Thank you for that. Very magnetic. Yes, thank you, Levine. Yes, it could be. Certainly the Sagittarius, the Venus, Jupiter. Well, as I say, this is a artificial situation today, but usually they're probably the life of the party, but also need space, alone time, turn the phone off, turn the world off a little bit as well. I think that's going to be important with the Sagittarian side plus the Virgo side together as well. All right, so I'm going to, let's see if there's anything else. Intuitive, magnetic. Yeah, I think what else did I write down here that we could look on? Yeah, loyalty, positive obsession, devotion, service, feeling different, seeing the world differently, being defiant and learning to accept that one's differentness is a strength. These are some of the things that we looked at as well. Okay, so craft and editing, these are all the things that we can look at as well. Okay, so I'm going to tell you who this is, and then we're going to invite them on and show you a range of pictures. Here's some I made earlier. Okay, so this is a gentleman who's joining us in a few minutes called Eddie Hampton Armani, and he was for many years Tina Turner's everything. Yeah, and he'll tell us more about that in a bit. He would style her, craft her wigs. He was her best friend through all the difficult years, through the resurgence, through her most successful time in the 80s. And they were incredibly close on a daily level, living together, working together through so much of the trials and tribulations of the 70s. And we'll discover a little bit about Eddie when he comes on in a moment, how remarkable he was as a very young person, wanting to will Tina Turner into his life when he saw that. And I want to ask him a bit about that in a moment as well. So he wrote a book. It was called The Real Tea. You might hear that expression a lot these days. Give me the tea, give me the truth. The Real Tina, The Real Tea. And it was a book that was published in 1998. So that's 25 years ago. That's crazy to think. I bought that book 25 years ago. I have my copy here. You can go on Amazon and pay about £160 for a copy. I would say wait and buy the new version of that, which is coming out at some point a little bit later, with a new cover on the right-hand side, beautiful cover. And it's really a book about devotion and love. And it's not an expose, as you might imagine sometimes when somebody writes about somebody famous, but it's really, I'll ask Eddie about this a little bit later, of what was behind it perhaps, or what he hoped to achieve with it all. He's spoken about it in interviews, particularly in the last few years. But it's a fascinating book because it really speaks of that Scorpio devotion to someone, and very powerful devotion to somebody that is world famous and nobody really knows. You know, we all think we know Tina Turner. We've all seen the film. We've seen the documentary recently. You may have been to see that amazing musical that has you laughing and crying and all of that. We don't really know her, but Eddie knew her for many, many years. And we'll talk about that. But I also want to talk about Eddie, because Eddie has had a fascinating life as a songwriter as well, as a performer, traveled around the world, working with Tina for many years, but eventually started to live his dream as a performer. So he'll tell us a bit more about that as well in a moment. And yeah, it's a fascinating story and a fascinating relationship as well. Okay. Sophie asked, are they still closed? No. Well, I'll ask Eddie to say something about that if he wants to in a little bit. But no, there's what. Oh, I'll let him say that, and if he, and I might add to it if he wants to me to elaborate on that or whatever. But it's best that he speaks his chart. Okay, so what I'm going to do. And thanks everyone for all your comments in the chat box, your ideas, etc. Really appreciate your time. So I'm going to invite Eddie to unmute and then to start the video. So I'm hoping that will come up in a second. Eddie's on somebody else's computer, and that can always be a challenge. So there should be another little, I'm just going to ask you to unmute. So click on the unmute button, Eddie, if you can. I know, and you're in the dark as well, so you might want to come a little bit closer. I'm going to add the spotlight. There we go, but you're still muted, so I'm just going to ask you to unmute. The joys of technology. There you go. Hi.
Hey.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Great, thank you, thank you. And how do you feel as a Scorpio? All of us talking about you behind your back. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely. Once you put yourself out there, you have to be ready for people to have their opinions about what you have to say. And you put yourself out there, you're out there. There's no going back in the closet once the door is open.
That's true. That's very true. Okay. So, well, first of all, thank you so much for being part of tonight. I really appreciate your time. And we've spoken about this over the last few weeks, and I really appreciate that you've had to get somebody else's computer. You've had to reserve time in the evening and be part of this tonight. So really, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let us, okay, so a lot of people are welcoming you in the chat box. I don't know whether you can see that, but I can always send you that later if you want to see that, but people are welcoming you in there. Is this your first time? It's not your first time on Zoom though, is it?
No, it's not. I'm doing the corona virus thing. I did a couple interviews for Australia, and I did this morning, and we did that by Zoom because of the fact they weren't allowing anyone in the studio at the time. So I'm a little bit used to it. It's just that when you do these things, your face always looks that big. And all of that. But you know what? Thanks for having me. And I'm very glad to be here to share my story and to have some insight into what I've experienced with this incredible, fabulous, brilliant woman.
Yes, yes. Well, let's talk about you first of all, if you're happy to do that. In the book, you mention a little bit about your early life. You don't say much about that. And I'm wondering, is there anything that you're happy to share about your early life, about your mother, anything that you'd happy to tell us?
Absolutely. Basically, I was, my mother was a single mother with 3 children. And I think that I must have been about 5 at the time that I discovered that I had to start learning to do things. My mother always said that I came out as an adult, like I had already been here another lifetime, which I believe because I never really experienced what most children experience as being a child. I always, in my childhood, I always felt that I had to learn quick and do quick. And I enjoyed it. It was really good. And so by having this responsibility, and my mother was a single mother, again, I had to look after my brother and sister. And so my only outlet for myself, for some strange reason, was music. Once I heard music, I changed. I became, I just went into my own world. And so that was the love that I had, and what just got me off, you know, as a child. You know, you kids get excited about the new bicycle, and they get excited about going out and playing or swimming and doing all that. Yes, don't misunderstand me. I did those things, but I always had one eye looking after my brother and sister. And not only that, sometimes the kids in the neighborhood, I always took on the role along with wanting to take on the role of looking after everyone, to being the responsible one. Almost like being a little bit bossy, but in a good way. So I've always enjoyed that, and that was always great for me. And then as I started to get older, I realized that the responsibility got greater, and like I would have to get up a little bit earlier than the other kids and make sure that they were ready for school. And then I'd walk them to school first, and then I would to go to my classes afterwards. Then I would leave school early and then have to go and pick them up, my sister from her class, and then go on to the babysitter and pick my brother up. And we go back home, and we were taught back in those days, there was a group of us, we always walked together. We never stopped and spoke to strangers. And we got home after school. And once we got in the house, we locked the door. We did have occasionally sometimes some babysitters or somebody that would come in and look in on us. But you have to remember, you're going back quite a few years ago, and things were different. People had to work. We didn't have the luxury. I never ever in my life got picked up in a car, or I was driven to school or picked up from school. It was, with other kids, and we walked and we stayed in a pack, and we were told and we obeyed not to come out of that group. We would go into the schoolyard, and we would leave the schoolyard and we'd go home, and then from there, that's where so my responsibility was always there. And then again, as I said, my escape was music. When I heard music, I came alive. I just went to another place. And I had this friend of my mother's who also was in the neighborhood, used to look in on us. And she took me to my first ever concert. I think I must have been about 7 years old or something. And we went to go see James Brown. And I remember that I had to stand on the seat to watch the show, and there was people everywhere, and I was just trying to see as much, but it was a big stage. It was lots of lights, and he was just electrifying. I mean, and I just, gosh. And then from there, I start listening to other music and stuff. And then my cousin, one day we were outside playing, and I used to dance around and do all that stuff. I would hear music and just start dancing. I would just get lost in it. And my cousin grabbed me one day and says, "Oh, you got to come and see that wild woman I was telling you about." And I was going, "What wild woman?" She says, "Oh, you got to come." So she's dragging me up the stairs into the house. And back in those days, everyone had a little black and white television, and the television was turned up quite loud. And as I was walking up the stairs, I started hearing this voice. And as I heard this voice, I was like, wow. And then when I walked in, and the television was there, and I saw Tina Turner for the first time. It was Ike and Tina Turner review with the Ikeettes and the Kings of Rhythm, who were the band. And all I saw was Tina Turner. I did not see anything else. Occasionally I would look and see the girls, the Ikeettes or whatever, but that was my first love. That was my love. And I do have to say, and I'll make it very clear, if I've ever known what love was or what love is, for me, it was Tina Turner. It is still Tina Turner.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. So you were all dancing. Did that make you a bit of an outsider at that age, or there a lot of people that were was it the time that people were just losing it to James Brown and Ike and Tina Turner? Or did you feel very different from the pack?
I always felt different. I always felt different. I didn't know what exactly the difference was to explain it to you, but I always knew that I was different. There was some part of me that, because I was different, I felt special. So I felt that I had one up on the other kids, because I felt like I love music and they're not really into music. They're all watching Disney programs, and they're all, doing this and doing that. And I sneak off and I listen to music. And just to go back, I begged my mother after I realized who Ike and Tina Turner were. And I begged and begged, I just drove her mad, and said, please, for Christmas, can I have Ike and Tina Turner record? Can I have a record player? Can I, da-da-da? And I drove her so mad that she at one point said, listen, if you mention that woman's name one more time, you're getting nothing for Christmas. And to my astonishment, that Christmas, all the presents came out and we were all running to the tree and we were opening our presents and whatever. And I just knew I was getting this record player. I just knew I was getting Ike and Tina Turner records. I knew I was going to get, a different variety of music. And there was nothing. There was some little toy thing or something. And I remember opening it up and just burst out crying. And my mother said, for God's sake, if you look over there to the left behind, my present wasn't under the tree. My present was hidden behind a chair. And she says, if you go, oh God, I get a bit emotional now. I'm thinking about it. She goes, if you go over to the behind the chair, there's your present. Now you can stop driving me mad. And I went over and it was all wrapped up and I just ripped the paper off, and it was one of those portable little record players, and it was the speed was 45, it was 33, and it was 78, and you could play singles. And then I got a couple singles and one album by Ike and Tina Turner. While the rest of the kids during the rest of Christmas were out playing the toys, riding the bicycles, I was in the corner. I was just listening to the record. And back then you could play the 45s and release the handle, and it would keep repeating the record over and over and over again. Well, I drove everyone mad, but that was my passion, and it only got bigger and better. And yes, I did. I felt like an outsider because I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that partially I chose to be a bit of an outsider because I had so much responsibility and I had to do so many different things with the family and, with cousins and this and that. And my own quiet time, my special time for me was when I listened to my music. That was mine. And I didn't have to share it. They could hear it, but I didn't have to share it with them. It was mine.
And you didn't have to be responsible for anybody else in that moment. You could just lose yourself, I guess.
I lost myself so many times. I mean, there used to be times when my mother would get so upset with me. She goes, if you don't turn that record player off, if you don't come in here and do your homework, if you don't da-da-da-da, I'm taking it away. And there was a couple occasions when, I got myself into a little bit of trouble, and she did take it away. And the funny thing about it, she would go to work. I knew where she hid it. And while she was at work, I would take the record player out and play it. And before she got home, I'd put everything back, like, and she would say to me, one day she just said to me, oh, I know you're playing that record player. She goes, I know, the other kids have told me. And I said, oh, and but yes, childhood was fascinating for me because I had that thing that, I didn't have to share. It was mine.
And you had that belief that Tina Turner was going to be in your life, your best friend from an early age. What was it about her? What was it, the specialness? If you can put it into words, it might be difficult. You've written a whole book on it, but what was it about her that encapsulated that? What was so enticing about it? I guess that's what I'm trying to ask.
It's everything.
Okay.
If I can just brutally say everything. Do you know what? It's a little bit on the verge. I actually was obsessed. What I did back in the day was so fantastic because it was like you could do the things that I did. Today, you couldn't. There was security and this and that and da-da-da-da. But like I said, when I had my private time, and the other thing that I used to love to do was dream. I would listen to the music and I would just be lost in my own world. And I just kept making plans that, oh, when I meet her, we're going to do this and we're going to do that and da-da-da. And I just had, like I went, like in California that, Ike and Tina would be driving in their limousine and I could wave to her and she'd wave back. That's the fabulous thing about kids. I didn't do anything differently than other kids did, except they did it for Disney and I did it for music.
And I remember reading in the book, you meet her early on in a shop. She dismisses you, but nobody could put you off. You were determined. And then later, but you're a ballsy 10, 11, 12-year-old, ringing up the studio, ringing up to find out where she is, to want to talk to her. I mean, that took a lot of guts And so tell us a bit about that energy of yours. You obviously don't ever hear the word no.
I don't, and just to go back ever so slightly, I was born in and up until the age of 11 years old, I lived in Seattle, Washington, and I used to dream that if I ever went to California, I was going to look up Ike and Tina. So I used to go to summer camp. That was one of the things that I did do, and that was for 3 weeks out of the summer. I came home one summer and my grandmother was terribly upset. And I said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "Oh, I'm going to really miss you." And I said, "Well, what do you mean? I'm back from summer camp now." And she goes, "No, your mother has decided now that you guys are moving to California." And so I boohooed and cried. And I said, "Oh, no, I will never leave you," because I was so close with my grandmother. And this and that, and put on a show. And finally, my mother and my grandmother were whispering something. And then the next thing, my grandmother said, "Well, do you know, darling, Ike and Tina Turner, they live in Los Angeles." I stopped, I froze, and I went, "When do I start packing?" I mean, complete turnaround. So when I got to Los Angeles, I was 12 going on 13. And of course, I just thought you pick up the phone, call the operator. And in America, it's different. You called the operator and say, "No, 411 information. Can you connect? Can you give me the phone number to Ike and Tina Turner?" And of course, there was no number for Ike and Tina Turner. So I kept on, and I went to school, and I come home, and I think of something. I try to be clever, and I looked at the album covers, and it said Bollock Sound Recording Studio. So I called information. They gave me the phone number, and because they actually had the phone number, I froze. And then the woman kept saying, "Are you there? Are you ready to take the number down?" Back in those days, you had to have a pen and paper ready to take the phone number down. Anyway, I got the phone number, and yes, I called every single day after school. And what I did is I said, "Can I speak to Tina Turner?" And she says, "I'm sorry, but Tina's not here." And I would hang up. And I did this after so many times. And then the secretary said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Ike and Tina Turner. I'm Tina Turner's biggest fan." And she says, "Oh, it's really sweet." She goes, "But darling, Ike and Tina are on the road. They're working." And I said, "Well, no, I have to see her. I have to see her." And I just kept insisting. Then I got to know this woman really closely, and she took a liking to me. And then I went shopping with my mother for school shopping and whatever. And I'm there. And this is the part that's so amazing. I didn't see her. I heard this voice, and I went, "Oh my God." And I froze, and I looked over, and I saw Tina Turner, and she was with this other woman at the time, and we were shopping there, and I was off with my sister. So I had to have a witness because nobody would believe me. So I ran and got my sister, dragged her over. I said, "That's her, that's her." In the meantime, Tina's looking at me. She's kind of halfway smiling, like she was in a hurry. It was school season. She was buying clothes for the kids. And I was such a pest to a point that she just went, and she had clothes for the boys that she was buying them. And she just said, "This pest, who is this boy?" And she left the store, didn't buy a thing. She just, so years later, when I told Tina that story, she didn't quite remember it. But she says, "Oh, it makes sense now because you've made up." Because yeah, okay, so yes, but I never ever gave up hope. To me, it was just a matter of fact. Well, I'm gonna be friends with Tina Turner.
Yeah.
Or I'm just gonna be friends with her.
But that then goes on to becoming a working relationship. So you get invited to a party. So your persistence pays off. Are you on the phone for about a year, chatting to this really generous lady? And
yes, it was about 9 months, almost a year. Yeah, somewhere around in there. And Ike and Tina had just opened their own recording studio called Bollock Sound Recording Studio. And the studio had been up and running for like, a year and a half or whatever, but they never had a grand opening. So she decided that it would be good for me to, come to the studio and finally meet Tina properly. And so anyway, she spoke to my mother. They made all the arrangements. And oh gosh, I'll never forget. It was on a Friday. We drove to the studio, and I didn't want to go to school that day. I said to my mother, "I can't go to school. I'm too excited." She goes, "Well, if you don't go to school, you're not going to the party. You're not going to meet Tina." So anyway, I went to school, came home, did my chores, got changed because I think the party started about 5 o'clock or something. Anyway, I arrived at the party, And it was, champagne. You got to remember something. I was at this time about 13, 12 and a half. Yeah, 13. And so there's all these champagne glasses and bottles and people smoking cigarettes. And back in those days, everyone smoked and it was smoky and this and that. So Linda said to me, she gave me all the rules that I had to follow. And she said, now you wait right there for me. And so as I was waiting there, I was the only kid there. Everybody was adults. And everybody kept walking by, patting my head, going, oh, isn't he cute? Oh, how cute. Because they all thought that I must have been Ike and Tina's kid. So they were being, very nice to me. So not realizing that I wasn't. So then finally Linda came back and she goes, okay, now you can go see, because it started getting really busy. She goes, I can't take you now, but just go straight down. Tina knows who you are and she's expecting you. So I walked straight down this long hallway to this recording studio and I walked in and there she was. And it was like seeing the queen on the throne. And when I came in the corner of her eye, she saw me, but she pretended she didn't. Anyway, I stared at her for uncomfortable few minutes. And then finally I got the nerve and I went over and I just stuttered out. I just said, hi, Tina, my name's Eddie and I'm your biggest fan in the world. And I'm so glad to meet you. And da 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 da. And I just kept talking. And finally she was like, okay, thank you very much. That's nice. Why don't you run along and, enjoy the party? And I couldn't move. I was just, every thing in her face, every line, she didn't have lines, but everything about her face I studied. I was just mesmerized. So I guess Tina felt like, well, if he's not going to leave, then I'm going to leave. So she excused herself. But that was that was the beginning.
And you then, Ike Turner, who we'll talk about in a minute, he suggests you're the biggest fan, so start a fan club. You took it seriously. You rang the next morning and you were ready to work. Is that right?
That's exactly correct. It was a joke because one of the journalists said, oh, is this, can I get a picture, Ike and Tina? Is this your son, with your son? And I said, no, he's our biggest fan and he calls the studio every day and he's the biggest fan. What I'm going to do, since he loves Ike and Tina so much, I'm going to put him in charge of all the fan mail. That was on a Friday. Monday morning, I called up and said, when do I start? It was a joke and I drove him crazy. To be honest with you, I think it was about, oh gosh, it must have been 6 months. Again, the phone calls every day after school going, when do I start? When do I start? And then finally, he gave in. He said, okay, if he wants to start. And the funny thing about it, he said, I was by this time 13, going on 14. And he said, well, if he wants to do a fan club, he's going to have to, all the expenses he was being mean. He said, all the expenses he's going to have to come out of his own pocket because I'm not giving him a cent. Well, don't worry about that. I got around that. Eventually I wore Ike down and he gave in and then I did, and it was because I was so young, I was only 14 and then going on 15. And then by then I put the first Ike and Tina Turner fan letter together and I started answering fan mail, and I would answer the fan mail and then I worked my way into it and then I start growing up and then I'm by this, and then I was invited to the studio for something and Ike and Tina were doing a live broadcast and I was there and then Tina would say, oh, Eddie, can you go get me a Coca-Cola? Or Eddie, can you da-da-da-da? And I was so eager and I was running and getting these things and I was like, oh my God, I'm getting a Coca-Cola for Tina Turner and da-da-da-da. And then she started really, really acknowledging me. And so that's how my relationship with her started. And then I got close to the Ikeettes and the girls. And then one day she saw me dancing and then she just went, you're pretty good, aren't you? She goes, and then she made a joke. Well, if I ever need a stand-in or an understudy, I know who to call. So it was like a running joke. I knew every move she made. I knew her mannerisms, the way she walked, the way she talked, the way she acted. And it was just, again, it was my thing. I didn't have to share it with anyone, it was my thing. And I got to listen to all the songs and sometimes Ike would play me the songs before, anyone else and ask me what I thought and this and that. And it was incredible.
So he was pretty tough, pretty mean, and he had a habit of fining everybody if they were out of step, or they didn't do this or didn't. I mean, that was famous, that he was a pretty tough customer. But I think you said in the book that you were so innocent and naive that he took that as boldness, that you weren't afraid of him. Is that right?
Yes. No, I wasn't afraid of him. I just would like he would say, like I remember once he said to me, "Don't you have some homework to do?" And I said, "I've done it already." Things like that. I would speak up for myself. I was never afraid of Ike. And he out of fairness, um, he didn't give me any reason to fear him because I was a fan. So he wanted to impress me. He was actually very nice. Um, but most abusers are nice, aren't they? you know they treat everybody else nice except the person that they're abusing, which we'll get into all that a bit more later. But no, he Ike, and to his fault, he was nice to everybody except the person he should have been nice to.
Yeah. And when did you were so young at this point, when did you become aware that your idol was being mistreated? I mean, you must have wanted to be super protective towards her as well.
Well, it was, again, just to make it very clear, abusers don't abuse their victims in front of people or anything like that at all. I heard Chinese whispers and things like that. And then sometimes as I got older and I got a car and I could go to the studio, I used to go to the studio at least twice a week, after school, and I just go and hang out, and I do my fan mail and do this. And then sometimes Tina would invite me on the road and do all that kind of stuff. But I noticed a sadness about Tina sometimes. And she had a sadness about her. And then, of course, me being clever, that wasn't good enough for me. Now I was at the recording studio, and I was, um, was acknowledged by Ike and Tina. I knew that I found out who her kids were. They were only a year and a half, 2 years older than me. And so I wanted to get to the house. I wanted to get inside of that. So I befriended Ike and Tina Turner's kids and played with them, which I was bored shitless, just so that I could get into the house. And then Tina would go, "Oh my gosh, I'm used to seeing you at the recording studio. Now you're at my house." And I said, "Oh, I came to play with the kids. They're doing this and doing that." And she knew what was going on. And then every now and then when she was really not, and you got to remember, they work so hard. They were always working. Tina was always doing something. She never sat still. And again, to Tina's credit, the Tina that on stage, that's Tina Turner. When she's off stage, honestly, she's just as energetic. I mean, when she drives, when she goes to the grocery store, when she shops, she makes a list. Everything is with speed and with, oh, I got to do that. Oh yeah, I forgot to, and do that. When I worked for her eventually, it was like, she made it very clear to me, Eddie, it's a job. If you want it, you're going to have to earn it, because I will tell you something twice. And if you don't get it by the third time, you're out. And let me tell you something, I got it. I got it because I wanted to get it. And it was fascinating. And it was such an education. And I was good in school. I went to school, and by this time I was going from junior high school into high school. And I was just absolutely obsessed. And, sometimes people say, "Oh, after a couple of years, you get bored with this and you change, and it would have been someone else and whatever." I loved music. I loved all kind of music. Don't misunderstand me. Ike and Tina were the top of the list, but I listened to everything else. I mean, I listened to the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Gladys Knight and the Pips, the Motown sound. I loved the Stax, the blues. I loved music, but Ike and Tina were the king and queen for me. And I never, ever outgrew it. I outgrew my clothes, I outgrew my friends, I outgrew this, I outgrew that, but I never outgrew Ike and Tina Turner. And they embraced me. I mean, they did embrace me. And another reason why I think they embraced me so much is for the fact that Ike and Tina weren't really necessary. They weren't like bubblegum pop. They weren't pinups. They weren't pop, and all my friends that did like music, everybody was into David Cassidy or pinning up this one or the Jackson 5 and whatever. My room, when I walked into my room, there's nothing but posters on the wall of Ike and Tina Turner or album covers. And because I knew them, I got everything signed, and I got everything before it came out. And but I was very clever. I just weaved myself in there, and you know, and I never tire of even before we did this video today. I was doing this today. I was up and I was doing my errands and whatever, and I had my playlist on, and all my special music was coming on, and a variety of things in it. And every time Tina came on, it was just, oh, it was electric. You know, even to this day, it's electric. And even songs that back then, or the solo stuff, or the in-between stuff, and the things that people don't know about that got forgotten, it still gives me that charge. I mean, right now I'm talking about her, and I swear it's like electric going through my body. I'm excited like that kid, you know, that I was, but that kid still lives inside of me, and through their music. And yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so you became indispensable, really. You made yourself available. You were able to do stuff. You didn't fail more than twice, and you did it all. So where's the point where you step over and become so close, you become the confidant? Is it before she leaves Ike? Is it after? Is it where he's no longer in the picture? When does that happen?
Well, just before Ike and Tina split up, funny enough, I got a part-time job working at the recording studio because I had a car and I could drive. And I would come, I got a part-time job working in the studio on the weekends. And so, I was just in, you know, and the day that Ike and Tina went to Dallas, Tina was really in a very, very funny mood. And I think I explained it in my book. I could sense there was something not right, because she was a bit different. She was a little off. She wasn't as friendly, and it wasn't just with me, but she was with everyone. It was just, and another reason why she was that way is because Ike and Tina were supposed to be going to Dallas. They missed about 4 flights because every time the car was waiting for them, Ike had been in this recording studio. He had been up for like 6 or 7 days straight, on the drugs, on the booze, you know, the party was going on and whatever. And Tina was annoyed. It's like, oh, you know, can I curse on here? No.
If you like.
Okay. She was basically like, for fuck's sake. I mean, you know, this is my life, you know. And finally they got Ike up. And if you can actually imagine Ike, Tina, and Ike's mistress. Tina and Ike's mistress had to get Ike in the shower, get his clothes ready, and then get him in the limousine. And then they were off to Dallas. And that's when it all started, because he had been up, he was irritated. Tina really had had enough. And they were off. We were in the recording studio like normal. And the next thing was we get a phone call that Tina's missing. And it was like, what? And the funny thing about all of it is that I was like going, yeah, go girl. Tina's fun. Because during that period of time, Diana Ross had left the Supremes, Sonny and Cher had left Sonny, and it was like, okay, so Tina's gonna go solo and she's gonna be, you know, even bigger and whatever. And so that was it. And from that point, Tina never, you know, she never came back. She never came to the recording studio again. She only went back to the house. She snuck into the house, you know, their marital house. I never went to the house really, because he stayed at the recording studio getting high all the time. But Tina snuck into the house a couple of times and had people go in and get things for her and whatever. But she never spent another night in that house or was ever visit that recording studio again. And she made her escape.
So you hear this, and part of you might think, well, he's done away with her, or she's left, or she's free. And how do you reconnect with her? And then is that when you become the central person in her life to help her? Is that when it happens?
Yeah, to make it short and sweet. In the meantime, I said to you that I was really close friends with the kids. And then I was terribly, incredibly close with Tina's sister, Aline. And so Aline used to keep me in the loop about everything. And I know Tina was in hiding. Aline couldn't tell me that much or whatever. And at one point, I thought that Tina was actually hiding at my parents' house. I mean, and I, you know, got really nasty. Now that's when I saw the nasty side of him. When he started to freak and realize Tina wasn't coming back, he thought that we all knew something or whatever. But then what happened was then Tina was in hiding for a good 6 months. Well, 6 months, yeah, 6, 9 months. And then she got her own little house up in Lower Canyon, and it was Craig's birthday. Craig is Tina's eldest son, the one, unfortunately, God bless, that took his own life a couple of years ago. It was his birthday, and Craig is Tina's eldest child. And Tina, well, I'm missing a bit, but anyway, you have to read the book too. But anyway, I got a phone call out of the blue, and it was Tina, and it was really funny. And she said, I always have to do this. She says, hello, Eddie. And I said, oh, hi. She goes, hi. She goes, Eddie, listen, I don't have a lot of time to talk right now, but I need you to do me a favor. And so she said, it's Craig's birthday. She didn't have money to buy him a birthday cake. And I used to make Tina all these cakes, and she loved the cakes. And she said, could you do me a favor, make Craig a birthday cake, but this time put some frosting on it and do this and do that. And I said, yes. And I was so excited. So she gave me the directions to her house, and I was in heaven. And so I made the cake, drove up to Tina's. And the first time I had seen her, you know, in a year or so. And I was so excited. I'll never forget. I just was like, I had the cake and I was like that. She goes, Eddie, put the cake down before you drop it. And then she was like, you know, and then we embraced each other. And then from that point, I started making myself indispensable, you know. And I got all the information and everything I needed through her sister, because I was so close with her, and I was close with the family and the boys, and you know, they were my second family. I mean, I was involved in you know, everything. And then going fast forward, I used to always beg Tina for a job and this and that. And she goes, when the time's right, or this and that, and da 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 da. And then I had a job working at a company. We used to sell office supplies, so I used to have to go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning to sell office supplies. And remember, there's no mobile phones or anything like that at all. And then I was in bed, sleep, and I had to get up to go to work, and the phone rang, and I thought, who could be calling me at this hour? And it was Tina. And she just basically, and the thing about Tina too, she's very just straight to the point. She doesn't, you know, she's not a flowery person. She doesn't baby you. She doesn't cuddle you. She's not that kind of person. She's very just straight. But nice, you know. And she just said, hi, Eddie, it's Tina. Listen, you know, and in Los Angeles, we were having really, really horrible bad floods and bad rain. And she was out on the road, and her house was had some water damage, and she needed somebody to go to really help rescue the house and whatever. She goes, you want to work for me? You got the job. This is what you have to do. And I said, oh, great. So when do I start? She says, now. So she gave me the information. I called the accountants. They gave me a set of keys. I went to her house, and she would call me up and tell me step by step what she wanted done. And I did it.
And those 5 years, really, after she left Ike, to the point where things started to get moving, that was, you know, that was a tough 5 years. It must have been for both of you in terms of her survival, avoiding death threats, and all of that. I mean, you must have been emotionally invested as well, and scared sometimes for your own safety.
Oh no, it was scary. It was scary. I mean, a couple of times I actually called me personally and said, what the F are you doing up there? Da, 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 da. This is none of your business. And, you know, if I catch you up there again, and da, 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 da. I was like, oh, please, you're so yesterday. You know, it's not even about you. But we had, it was scary. There was a couple of times that we actually had to sleep on the floor. And I moved in with Tina for a while. And well, for quite a while. I still had my own place, but I still lived with her. And sometimes we would sleep on the floor. We had double security. We had to double check everything. It was sometimes quite scary. I mean, sometimes the door intercom bell would go, and we had a little code thing we would do, because Tina had a Thai housekeeper. So we never answered the door. We would go, somebody ring the intercom bell, because she lived in a house, and it was, you know, gated, but you could jump over the fence. And the intercom would go, and we say, hello. And they say, hi, is Tina there? And say, Tina, not here. I take message. No. Okay, thank you. Bye. And we would be looking out of the, you know, we would have, I would look out the windows and this and that. And then there was a couple scary points where I did show up unannounced. Tina's biggest fear was that she was going to come home one day and Ike was going to be sitting there in her house. I mean, until the day that I died, Tina always still, with her success, with everything that was going on, she always still had lived in fear because Ike was a thug. I mean, when it comes down to it, realistically, I mean, Tina's quite kind to him, but he comes from that old school and he really felt he owned her, you know, and if I can't have you, nobody will have you. And it was to a point where we didn't know if he would ever really let her go. But Tina's determination was like, you had me, I gave you everything. I'm gone. I have nothing else to say to you. You got it all. Now leave me alone.
She, from what you write about in the book, she was tough and strict, and as you know, you found that quite a few times. She had that ability to cut people off once it was gone, once it was dead, it was dead. And when you look back and you think about her life, do you think that was the lack of nurturing that she had? Was there a real sense of her not feeling loved from an early age? What's your analysis of it, really, looking back?
It was survival for Tina. Survival means that I controlled everybody who were Tina's friends. When she went to the grocery store, he would time her. He knew who she saw. She didn't have any freedom. And then her mother, which when I wrote my book, we couldn't go into full detail of this at the time because Tina was very sensitive about this. So I was respectful that way. But then when Tina wrote her second book and when the play came out, it expressed how her mother was. Tina's mother was a very cold woman. And Tina never felt loved by her mother, which is quite well known now. But to the extent in person, it was quite upsetting. You know, it was quite upsetting. I mean, Tina's mother never liked anime, but she liked Tina Turner. She liked being Tina Turner's mother. She liked the glamorous side of all that, of being Tina Turner's mother, but she didn't like anime. And Tina knew that, but Tina was always still like she was with Ike. She just put a smile on her face and she kept going. Tina isolated herself a lot. She cut people off. She could be very cold. She was never cutthroat, never backstabbing or anything like that at all. She just was a little girl, that little girl inside of her that was desperately to be loved. And she loved, and that's why it reversed to her on stage. Because when she hit that stage and she looked out into that audience and she saw those faces, that's what kept her alive. That's what kept her going. That's where she got her energy. That's where she got her strength.
Yes, the idea of survivor is so intertwined, isn't it, now with her image? If we come back to you for a moment,
Oh yes,
yes, please. When are you're obviously you're a songwriter, you're a performer yourself. When did that develop? Because you're obviously busy working with her. You've still got music as your grand love, your grand obsession. When do you start writing? When do you start wanting to perform?
Well, I always had it in me. So in school, I was in I studied acting, I studied dance. I love the arts, and so I did that in high school. And then I got with a little band for a while there. It was really funny because basically, I mean, you know, I was in my mind, I was Tina Jr. That was all fun and everything. And then as I graduated a bit more, just before I graduated high school, I started writing. I would always just write things down. I had a poem book. They were like poems, and I would write all these things down. And then one day a friend of mine saw them and said, oh, we could turn these into songs. And so we went to that other level. So I was always writing in the background. I didn't really want to pursue the acting and all that. I was busy with Tina. And then during this period of time, when Tina was just before she left Ike, I had these ideas for songs and things, but I dare not share it with anyone. And then when she was solo, one day I was staying with her and we were talking, and I had gone off and did some demos. And I said to her, oh, Tina, I wrote you a song. She said, when did you start writing? I said, I've always been writing. You've always been my inspiration. So anyway, I wrote a song. I wrote quite a few songs. And funny enough, she loved them. I'm not just saying, oh, she loved them because it's me. No, she really did love them. And she was going to record quite a few of them. And then Roger Davies, who is Tina's manager, felt a couple of them. There were some really good songs in there, but what happened, they didn't know exactly what kind of direction. The songs I was writing for Tina were more kind of rock stuff, like the Stones would do, and Tina wanted to do, and she loved that kind of thing. And then Roger, of course, was thinking, yeah, that's all good and dandy. And Tina did lots of demos, lots of songs before, she finally got, well, before she got What's Love Got to Do with It. But the boys, I mean, it's all down to credit to the Brits. Tina always had a special love for England, for Europe. And then when Heaven 17 contacted Tina to do Ball of Confusion, that really was the beginning. And in the meantime, Roger was trying to get her the deal with Capitol, and they were doing demos in LA. And they were good songs, and Tina's voice was fabulous, and this and that, and da 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 da. You can go on and on and on. And some of those songs I still think is fantastic, which have been later released on compilations and things like that. But it was the Brits that brought Tina home. I mean, Heaven 17, Let's Stay Together was, and I do have to tell this little story. When Tina did Let's Stay Together, she came home and there was 4 different versions, and the record company didn't want to release the version that we all love and know, where she starts off singing in that slow a cappella thing, and then the music starts. The record company didn't want that. They wanted her to just come in with, singing the chorus. And I kept saying to her, oh, Tina, and Tina loved that because nobody had heard her sing like that before. And the beginning of Let's Stay Together, let me say, Sans, baby, it just makes everyone stop. And they weren't going to release it. And then finally Roger was like, and give Roger credit, Roger would always run little things by me and say, Eddie, what do you think? Oh, what do you think? How do you think people perceive Tina and this and that? And, da, da, da. And they listened to me. And along with, Roger and Tina then really decided, no, I'm going to go with that. And so that was the beginning. That was the beginning, because people were so used to hearing Tina sing with so much energy and so much passion and this and that and just attacking a song, and then they just kind of slowed everything down,
So,
Same thing with What's Love Got to Do with It. When she sings, what's love got to do with it? I mean, your body just stops and chills,
So in terms of your own songwriting and what you were creating, that was put on hold for a bit, because I know that you needed really to be free of doing all the errands. You were making the wigs. You were indispensable in order for you to really pursue some of your dreams. And you did a lot of gigs, a lot of performing. Were you performing your own songs? How were you finding your voice?
I always rehearsed. I always practiced. I did this. I was in the studio doing songs and doing this and doing that. But I have to correct you on one part there and make it very clear. See, when I was working with Tina, my career was again, it was something for me, for me. I loved working with Tina. I loved traveling with her. I loved learning from her. It was just incredible. And then it wasn't until I did Pain, which I wrote for Tina, which Tina recorded and she performed and stuff like that, that I got a little bit of the itch. I got the itch. Oh, what's it like being on stage? And the other side of it was, when I used to watch Tina backstage, it is something electrifying seeing that person on stage. Now, for me being with Tina, I didn't really overly really pursue it. It was always a little bit kind of quiet. And then, and I shared it with Tina. There was a show in America called The Gong Show, and I went on The Gong Show, and I didn't tell Tina until the last minute. And then she saw it, and and her first opinion was, she goes, "Oh my God, Eddie," she goes, "you're a mini me." She goes, "Oh my God, you're a male version of me." She goes, "Next, you're going to come out with wings on, with jeans, singing It's Only Rock and Roll." But it was all a compliment, and it was a learning process, and I was sucking everything up like a sponge. And to my credibility, my credit, um, I was actually quite good at what I did. And then when I started developing and find out who Eddie was, that's why part of the reason I changed my name from Eddie Hampton, because Eddie Hampton had now, and Eddie Hampton was always my name. I never really thought about changing my name. It all came as a bit of an accident, and that was being on the road with one of the Ikettes, Lejeune, not Ikette, she wasn't Ikette then, she was working with Tina as one of the backing singer. And because I used to love to shop and go shopping, and I used to shop for Tina, and she would just send me out with the credit card, and I would come back with things, and or I'd go buy things for myself, and she goes, "Where'd you get that?" And I would say, "Oh, I got this done." She goes, "Oh, well, you need to go get another one. I'm having that." And we could wear each other's clothes, and we could do this and that. I mean, what I mean by wearing each other's clothes, I mean, Tina wore a lot of, trendy jeans and this and that and da 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 da. And she was like she was everything except, I will never say she was like a mother to me, because she wasn't, but she was she was my heroine. She was my icon. She was my big sister. She taught me everything, but she taught me because I watched and absorbed everything about her. That's how I, even when I pursued my career and actually got out there and started to do it, I remembered all those things she did when she was tired, how she get her energy, how she, did her voice, how she did this, she did that. I just, from that 5-year-old little boy, was watching and studying that woman from that age.
Wonderful. Well, we were looking at your charts together, and what comes across is a shared passion, enthusiasm for life, a real sense of adventure. And you traveled the world together. You had an amazing time. There were times when I think the management, Roger Davis, seemed to be worried that you might be too much of a good time with her, and she said to you, "Rein it in a little bit." Is that the case?
Yeah, Tina and I used to get into a little bit of trouble together. A little bit of, I was Tina's best friend. Tina didn't really have a lot of other friends. She had one other friend, Anna Marie, who died in a plane crash. And she was really close to. Anna's the one that helped Tina escape from Ike. But Tina and I were like, we're best friends. We shared everything. We were, I talked to her about my experiences of growing up. I was growing up. I always knew who I was and all of that stuff. I didn't have a problem with that. And we would discuss things, and we talked about things, and she would guide me, and she would give me advice, and she would tell me when I was being silly, and then I started making her wigs, and she taught me how to make her wigs. She taught me how to color them. She taught me how to clean her house. She taught me how to drive her. She taught me how to, I mean, honestly, I come from a really, really good family, and my family were quite well to do, but Tina was my college, my university, my schooling, my reality, disappoint. I mean, I spent Christmas Day with Tina Turner, and it was nobody there but just Tina Turner and myself. And I cooked the dinner, and Tina and I would sit down and have Christmas together, or we would have Thanksgiving together, or when we were on the road, my room was always next to hers, and we'd go downstairs and have dinner together. And and the great thing about it, we'd be on the road for 6 weeks, and I had to be at Tina's side 24/7. And we'd come back home, and then I unpack her and get her all settled and all that stuff. And then I'd leave and go to my own house. I had my own flat. And an hour later, Tina was on the phone, and she and I'd be on the phone for 2 hours. I mean, so you think about, you just spent all this time. What would you possibly have to still talk about? But we never stopped. We always loved each other's company. And again, that's what made a lot of other people a little bit jealous the word is, I'll just say it, people were jealous. We were so close, they were jealous. And when it came to the management thing, I think I kind of, out of fairness, put a couple people's back um, against the wall or whatever, because I would ask questions in Tina's behalf. And Roger is a damn good manager. Don't misunderstand me. He's the best. He made her, and I mean, they made each other. They worked together and had a good relationship and whatever. But Roger wanted full control. All the men in Tina's life, funny enough, Ike Turner, Roger Davies, and Tina's husband, and all of them have been very good. Don't misunderstand me, but they're all, oh, pardon, they're all fighting for that control, you know. And when Tina started dating Erwin, Roger had a lot of issues with that. You know, there was a lot of issues, and Tina and Roger sometimes would have difficulties, and Tina would have to tell Roger to back up, like, you're my manager, but you're not in my private life. And then the husband, Erwin, always really in the back of his mind wanted to manage Tina and da-da-da. But Tina was very smart in the end, because what she did, she made it very clear to Erwin, you're my partner, Roger's my manager. So they weren't best friends. They put on a good united front, but she does attract these men who want to, you know, be in control of her, because Tina also has that other side. She's that little girl comes out and she wants to be protected. You know, she wants to be loved.
And we looked at the idea, I think you may have heard it towards the end of the analysis, before we started talking, that it must have felt like quitting a habit when you both parted. And there's a very emotional part in the book where you sort of, she says, call me, but have the strength not to call me, because there's that sense you've been so close, her life is moving in a different direction. So there's, did you feel it was almost like an addiction, something that you had to come out of? May I ask how you felt about that?
Addiction. No, I never felt that Tina was an addiction. I just felt that Tina was love. It was love. It was she, you know, from the age of that 5-year-old, 6-year-old, who always had this woman in his life, who willed this woman in his life, who, and then made this woman appreciate him as a friend, and then to grow together. It was my relationship with this woman has just been the most educational, and like anything in life, and I make this very clear, yes, it's painful, but you know what, it's not really, because you got to say, I have the insight. I got the best of Tina. Now I'm just sharing her with the rest of the world. I've already had all of that. I have my memories that no one can take away from me. I have her music that will live on forever. When I watched the play, the only thing that I saw that I liked was, I did go see the opening night. I went to the premiere of the play, and I went to see it again. And I do like the play. I like the play because it really explains a lot of things and draws out the emotions. The movie, I mean, you know, the movie is probably still to this day one of the biggest selling of that kind of movie, and it's on all the time, and everybody talks about it, and everybody lives it and knows it and whatever. But yes, there was a lot of things in that movie that weren't right. Tina admits to that, whatever. But she, after a certain point with Disney, she just gave up. But that's what commercial success is, isn't it? It's to glorify certain things and do this and do that. I mean, don't misunderstand me, all those things. But she is, again, just a lovable person. She's not a mean, vindictive person, but when she had to learn to cut her feelings off, because people kept coming in and out of her life. There was no one ever steady in her life, so she never got used to holding on to things. So it was like, okay, well, that person is gone now, whatever. And so when it got to my part with Tina, to make it very clear, I knew that Erwin was going to be a very important part of Tina's life. And I knew that Erwin had a lot of issues with me. Erwin, you know, without slander or anything, but he was very, very terribly homophobic. He wasn't really used to being around that many Black people. And to say that was there was only a few of us Black people that were with Tina. But uh, um, he, and again, Roger was like that. I mean, I'm not saying because Erwin is German that he's racist or anything like that at all. No, I don't mean that at all. Roger's from Australia. No, he's not racist, but they're a little bit, when you're not in the business, you're just a normal person that goes to McDonald's, and those people treat you like that. When you're in the circle, you're still like, the bottom of the list. I mean, as far as they were concerned, I was Tina's maid. They forget about being her best friend and doing this and doing that and working for Tina. I worked for Tina, and make it very clear, I worked for Tina when Tina couldn't even pay me, and we didn't have any money. I mean, there was times that it was like, by the time she paid the band and paid her bills and did this and that, there wasn't any money. I remember once she came to me, she goes, "Oh, Ed, can I give you something? Because I can't afford to pay." And I said to Tina, "You don't have to give me anything. You don't have to give me anything. I mean, you every day, every time I'm in your company, you give me something. You give me something." Some people, some people don't understand that kind of love. But I do say, if you do understand that kind of love, or you get just an ounce of what I got, it's worth it. So you want to ask me, how do I feel about Tina not being in my life? I'm fine, because I had the best of her.
Yeah. Well, so the word probably isn't addiction, it's devotion. And it's that level.
Oh, complete devotion. And I think if I heard you correctly and you were reading the charts and whatever, the way you read that chart, am I right?
With what?
When you were, just before I came on, were you reading the chart, my chart?
Yes. We were looking at possibilities. Yes.
Yes, but there was a lot of things that were just absolutely spot on about the kind of Scorpio I am, how devoted I am. I do. I again, even being an adult, the person that I am today, I like to look after things. I like to nurture things. It was never a chore. I enjoy it. I enjoy it today. I still enjoy it. I can do 5 things at one time. I enjoy being busy. I enjoy that energy. And another thing too, that Tina and I were so great, to make it very clear to people, we really were kindred spirits. I mean, we were almost like twins in a different kind of way. I mean, we used to think a lot. We could say something. I said, "Oh, I was just going to say that," or we want to watch the same kind of movies, or we want to have vanilla Haagen-Dazs ice cream, or we fancied a big juicy hamburger, or I mean, we were in each other's company, just the two of us. And even when she was doing the album Private Dancer, and I was living in London at the time, and I wasn't working for her, but I was working for her. I never stopped working for her. You know what I mean? I was always there. She, we hung out, and we would have slumber parties. Like she would say, "Oh," and I'm staying at the St. James Hotel, bring your pajamas. And I knew what that meant. That means like, "Oh, you're going to be hanging out with Tina for 2 days." And then I would go, "Tina, I got to go home. I have no clothes." She goes, "Well, I've got clothes. I got jeans and things." And I mean, we never got tired of each other. But when something comes to an end, it's like having a loved one or being married for 30 years and you lose your partner. You have those memories, and no one can take that away from you, and no one can ever. And me writing my book, I wrote my book for me. I wrote my book to tell my story, my life, about this fascinating, fabulous woman. And another thing was that I never heard a story about, I mean, there's stories here and there or whatever, but there's never been a fan that's ever been able to get as close to their idol and do the things and share the things, and to two people that become almost one. And you got to remember something all this time, that Tina was single. She dated, but she was single. But when she found the love of her life, realistically, there wasn't really room for me anymore.
Yeah.
And that's just a natural thing that happens.
We were curious in the chat box earlier. Well, thank you for sharing that. We were curious about whether you took the spiritual path that she took as well. Were you interested in the Nichiren Buddhism? Did that ever come into your life?
Oh, I am a loosely practicing Buddhist. I believe in Buddha. I believe my I'm Baptist from the church, of course. I still believe and say my prayers every night. I say my Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. I have my Buddhas all over my house. And I also study law of attraction, which teaches you about life. What you put out, you get back. I'm a very, very spiritual person. And yes, I always went to church. I sang in the choir. I did all that kind of stuff. But then when I met Tina, she taught me about Buddhism. She used to laugh at me because I could never get the words right when we used to chant. And she used to, I mean, we used to fast together. I mean, we would fast. When I stayed with Tina, she would go, okay, we're fasting this weekend. And I go, oh, are we? She goes, yeah, we're fasting this weekend. So, and we would fast. And by the last day or 2 days before, it was over, we would be like, oh, she would be like, oh, Eddie, I don't know if I could take another day. And then when I was weak, then she was strong. When she was strong, I was weak. I mean, we did everything together. I mean, she taught me, and because she taught me and I felt what she was teaching me, it became natural. It wasn't forced on me. I wasn't doing it just because it was Tina telling me and showing me. I did it because spiritually we connected.
Thank you. Thank you. So the book is being reprinted at some point, perhaps in the coming year. You've also got another book that you want to write about. That's your story after that, your story up to present day. Is that the case?
Yes. What basically what I'm doing is that after 20 years, and a lot has happened and a lot of changes or whatever, I have come across some more incredible pictures of Tina and I together, like, on tour with the Rolling Stones and this and that and da 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 with Andy Warhol and all kind of different things. And then there's a couple stories that now I can tell, good stories, funny stories. It's just that you got to remember something. In a book, you can only tell so much in so many pages. And my book was quite thick, actually. But one of the things, my book was never released on paperback. So when the rights were reverted back to me, which they have been, I have now discussed with some people and talked to some people. Let's put it on paperback, put a new cover on, which is the mock-up cover you guys just saw, which I have to say, I love the real T with the lips, the real Tina. I love that picture. And so we're going to add a few new chapters, new pictures, and then that's going to be released. So hopefully we're hoping that will be, I give it 9 months to a year, and then that book will be ready to roll. And then I'm in talks with doing the Eddie Armani book, which is all about my life in moving to London and, being part of the 80s music scene. Marilyn from Boy George, Marilyn was my best friend. I hadn't really been around people that drug addictions and all that. I was around with Boy George and all that stuff, got arrested and this and that, and they came and raided the house. I mean, my life hasn't stopped, but I got a chance as Eddie Armani to actually, after Tina, then Eddie Armani really started to live life in a different kind of way. There was times when I had nothing. I was on the streets. I worked in a restaurant. I worked as a waiter. I get called over and I'm thinking, oh God, what did I do wrong? And the manager says, this woman, I saw this woman come in a couple times. So I thought she was one of those, those people that come in to rate the restaurant and do all that stuff. Anyway, she called up, come and said, listen, I've been watching you and I want you for part in a movie. So I did a movie with Rob Lowe, James Spader. I did another movie with Patricia Arquette's brother. I can't think of his name now. That used to be married to Courtney Cox. I did a movie with him. I was in the second Jessica Lange King Kong. I was a dancer in that. I traveled the world on my own as Eddie Armani. I played I didn't play when we did Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and all that kind of stuff. I went back on my own as Eddie Armani, stayed in the same hotel. I got great reviews. I played to, my club. And another thing to make it very clear, as Eddie Armani, I played every club and pub and working man's club in London. And I had Glenn Matlock, who used to be the Sex Pistols. He and I wrote loads of songs together. I had James Stevenson, that used to be with Billy Idol. Oh gosh, if I'm going to name drop, the guy from Zig Zig Sputnik, Neil, and I wrote several songs together. I worked with quite a few people, and I've had songs that have been out there. I haven't made it overly big, but I'm doing enough to keep myself busy and still looking good. I haven't been thrown off the bus yet.
No, no. And I was looking at your chart, and this is something we'll probably I'll have to send you later. But just it feels like there's a resurgence of energy in your chart. Obviously, energy in your life at the moment with the book, with the next projects, and it feels like the next year astrologically is going to be a enormous time to step back to do some of the things that may have just been on pause for a few years with life and living and loving and all of that. So and we're talking today at the very beginning of spring, and we're talking at a new moon, so there's a real sense of things burgeoning coming out for you as well. So that's really really exciting to see, and exciting to talk to you tonight. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I didn't for 1 minute think we'd run out of things to say, because I know you're just fabulous, and really
No,
appreciate it.
you know what? I love to talk. And I do have to say thank you very much for contacting me. And the minute that I got your email, your message or whatever, and we started to talk, I mean, I felt so comfortable, like I feel now. I mean, I'm not in my dressing gown, but I'm in a silk kimono, and I'm talking to you, and I'm very relaxed. And you know what? Yes, and I really do feel that it's not over until it's over. And as Tina would say, I'm just getting started.
Wonderful. Well, that's a great place to end it. Thank you so much for your time. You're getting a lot of love in the chat box. I will send you that later.
Oh, thank you.
And
And thank you to your viewers and to um, your all
students, yeah,
your students,
yeah.
because I want to say the right word. Thank you all for having me as a mystery guest. And when
And
the book is out, I'll be back.
please, and they were right about your smile. You have a megawatt smile, so it's fabulous to see it. We had a feeling you'd have a megawatt smile from your charts, so that was wonderful to see as well. So thank you again for your time, and thanks everybody for listening. And I'll get a copy over to you, Eddie, and we'll upload a copy for everybody as well later. So have a great night. Thank you again, Eddie.
You're more than welcome. And again, thank you. And Frank, don't be a stranger.
No, I won't.
Okay,
Take care.
cheers. Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Bye.
everyone. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Bye. Now I got to learn how to turn this thing off.
Don't worry, I'll turn it off for you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.